and were filled with passengers. Witnesses remember seeing bodies flying through the air. The station clock was stopped at 8:19 by the force of the impact. The area became a tangled, twisted mass of engines, passenger cars, and bodies.
One heard a terrific crash, and our coach was hit in the rear by the fast train. I remember distinctly our coach reared up by the locomotive on the Perth Express. One heard the crunching of metal and the splintering of the wood, and suddenly our coach turned completely upside down, and at this point I was knocked unconscious.
Using computer animation, the actual events of the accident can now be seen for the first time. Traveling over 60 miles per hour, the Perth to London Express tore into the parked commuter train. Then, within moments, disaster struck again. The Manchester Express, also late and trying to make up for lost time, barreled into the station and slammed into the wreckage. The Manchester's two huge engines were propelled off of the tracks and into the air. They sailed above the crowded platform and then crashed down, spewing scalding steam. Rescue teams and townspeople quickly descended on the station to search for survivors. They found a grisly scene of mangled bodies and twisted metal. Chaos ensued as they tried desperately to rescue the most seriously injured.
There was wreckage all strewn over two platforms and track, and carriages literally everywhere. And the main line express, which was a double steamer coming out from Euston, had ploughed up on top of the existing wreckage, which caused a gigantic heap of wreckage. And to get to some of the carriages was very awkward. The day in question, I worked there till 2 o'clock, and we was pulling bodies and live people and dead people out all the time. The image from my eyes as we was going round the scene was like a gigantic scrapyard with metal everywhere.
It was England's worst rail disaster in history. 123 people were killed and 150 injured. No one could explain why the driver didn't see the warning signal. Investigators sought ways to prevent similar accidents in the future. The results of their investigation prompted the widespread introduction of an automatic warning system.
An accident such as that at Havre couldn't happen today on the main lines of Britain, because all the main lines have been equipped with automatic warning signalling, which is a device which warns the driver if he's passing a caution signal. And if he doesn't acknowledge that warning, it automatically applies the brakes.
The warning system continues to be improved upon today, and it is credited with significantly reducing the number of railway fatalities in England. While the main business of railroads in the United States is freight hauling, there are still a few areas where a well-developed passenger train system is thriving. The Northeast Corridor between Washington, D.C. and Boston is one such place. When mistakes occur here, they are often fatal. On the evening of February 16, 1996, a full load of commuters were on their way home aboard a Maryland Area Rail Commuter Train, or MARC train. They were getting close to their destination, Washington, D.C.'s Union Station. It was Friday night, and many were looking forward to the weekend. The MARC train was moving along at a pretty good clip, over 60 miles per hour. 40 miles away, an Amtrak passenger train, the Capital Limited, pulled out of Union Station. It was running late on its way to Chicago. 30 minutes later, the Amtrak train and the MARC train crashed in a fiery head-on collision.
I remember that day very distinctly because we were just getting ready to sit down to have dinner. And the phone rang and said, "You guys got a train yet?" We just dropped and we were all out the door.
Rescuers had to battle their way through a steep, densely wooded area. As they arrived on the scene, they discovered a blazing inferno. When the two trains hit, diesel fuel gushed out of the Amtrak tanks and spewed into a gaping hole in the lead MARC car.
The scene was probably one of the more devastating things that a firefighter will encounter. You have a large area that's involved. You have fire that's in two different areas. You have victims that are injured. You talk about the big one occurring, and just initially, as soon as it went out, you could tell that this was going to be a serious incident.
I said, "Man, this is an accident." I don't know where I got all this religion from, but I mean, it was just coming out of me. Lord, what are we going to do?
And it was an interesting situation just to try to get into the train, because the way it was ripped open, every time you took a step, your foot would fall to the floor. Once we got in, we advanced our line up through the train, knocked the rest of the fire that was in there.
As the smoke began to clear, the firefighters discovered a gruesome scene.
What's on the other side?
It was pretty much bodies everywhere you step. You crawl over one, you crawl onto another, crawl over that body onto another body. It was a strange feeling. I mean, you've felt bodies in a house fire before, you know, one or two, but it was strange to feel body after body.
Three crew members and 8 passengers died that night. The National Transportation Safety Board immediately launched an investigation. A yellow warning signal 10 miles from the impact zone should have told the MARC engineer to slow down and give the right-of-way to the Amtrak train. After the MARC engineer stopped his train at the Kensington station, he then accelerated to 60 miles an hour, forgetting about the caution signal. The Amtrak passenger liner had switched tracks to pass a slower-moving freight train. By the time the MARC train engineer hit his emergency brakes, he was only 1,100 feet away from disaster. When the investigators completed their work, another safety problem became evident. Autopsies revealed that many of the passengers were killed by flames and smoke, and not by the impact of the crash.
We know that 8 of those 11 people did not die in the crash itself from trauma. They died from either smoke inhalation or smoke and fire damage. What we also know is that the people were not able, those that survived the initial crash, were not able to get out of the cars. I was appalled when I saw how difficult it would be for any person to get out of those cars. There were some emergency windows marked, but they were poorly marked, and without emergency lighting, which had failed in this case, it would be almost impossible for people to find them. So just think about that. Smoke, fire, darkness, people can't breathe. I mean, it would be almost impossible for anyone to get out. And that's exactly what happened.
Today,